house is on Gulf Road here, and we are great pleasure today to talk about the Meikle house. Bunny and Bruce are going to present their little talk about that house. It's on Benson Road. It's 1930 Benson Road. If you're going up Benson Road towards the new fire hall, it'll be on the left. Yes?
Can I make a quick announcement before we
Sure.
start? The subcommittee to revise the character plan, Point Robert's character plan, is finished. The plan will be sent to the folks in Planning Development Services to make sure that it meshes with county code, and then we'll come back and there will be public hearings. And please come.
Okay.
Have input, make sure that everything feels the way we want Point Roberts to feel, make sure that any changes that are there are ones that do violence to, your image of what this place is. And without that kind of input, you can't complain afterward if you don't put the complaint in before.
Thanks for that. That's Point
The notice
Robert's
will be
past,
around on Point Interface.
present, and future is very important. Yeah. Here comes something. Okay, so, all right. Without any ado, here are Bruce and Bunny.
So, I'm not just here to heckle me if I can do it wrong. So it was a factual error. I would expect the native Point Roberts to shut me down. So I'll do my best. So this is the story of a Point Roberts house in Lakeland Heights. Who built it? Who lived there? What they did? And how it came to be the Meikle house. It's only a
Speak up a little bit, please.
Really? Okay. Am I mumbling already?
No, it's not loud enough.
Okay. This picture is the earliest one we have. We think it's from the 1920s. Lakeland Heights is a plain white, two-story, four-square farmhouse. It's got a front porch. 4 bedrooms up, living room, dining room, kitchen down. Little small basement. At the time, an outhouse, wood stove for cooking, kerosene lamps for lights. And this is the man who built it. He was 23 years old when he left Iceland in 1881. And when he left, his name was Jon August Bjornsson. And after he arrived in Canada, he became John Burns. He landed first in Winnipeg, where he married Rosa Brynjolfsson in 1890. The woman on the right is Rosa. That's my great-grandmother on the left. They're very friendly looking son here.
Welcoming bunch. This was the welcoming bunch.
What was your great-grandmother's name? Gudrun.
Life was very serious. Nothing mattered about life in those days. They didn't smile much.
So, after the Burns got married, they moved around a lot. They were in Seattle. They arrived in Point Roberts in 1891 when their first son, Halda, was born. Their second son was born in Seattle, and the remaining 4 children were all born in the Point. But John, he did logging, he did fishing, he did whatever he needed to do at that time. So if you go through the census, he's traveling around quite a bit. And in 1920, we found him in Seattle, for example, and he was fairly old at that point, living in a room house with other workmen from all over the U.S. And the building is still there, it's in Ballard, it still stands. Anyway, in May 1st, 1894, John Burns made his settlement on the Benson Road property. It's not clear that from the LR report that there was anyone there before him, because the LR report usually says if there was another squatter that sold the land to the Icelanders who came in. So it doesn't look like it.
And we bought it in 1894.
He moved on in 1894, yeah. I don't know if he bought it. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know how that worked. These are the kids. And let's see, I'm already...
Is Eggert the little guy?
Eggert, yes.
He looks devilish now.
He's the beginning of his long devilish life, that's true. Just to give you an idea of what these people were up against, I borrowed one of the Magnuson family pictures because the lot in the back is the property of Lakeland Heights. And think, and some of you may know this, but according to Arnie Wordle, and what happened was John Ferguson was a woodcutter on Benson Road, and he lived, I think, where the Magazine property is. It was before the Magazines were there. And he had piles of cordwood that he was cutting off the property and selling to the canneries. And because this was still a U.S. military reserve, somebody ratted him out and sent a picture off to D.C. And eventually that's why they sent Ellett to come out and see what these scoundrels and scallywags at Point Roberts were doing. And according to Arnie Myrtle, Ellett told him that he was armed to the teeth. Ellett was ex-military. He was ready to do whatever he needed to straighten up these bandits on Point Roberts, and he just found all these nice Islamic farmers who were homesteading, having farms and families and stuff. So he immediately calmed down and decided instead of shutting down Ferguson, he would do a census of all the people who are on the land, how much holdings they had squatted on, what houses they built, all the improvements they made. And with his report going back to Teddy Roosevelt, he said these are all fine upstanding people, let's let them homestead. And that's how it was one of the last places in the States to get homesteaded, because of Ellett and because of John Ferguson stealing trees from the U.S. military. Let's see. One thing you can see from this picture is that the land was, I think this is mostly second growth. I think there was a fire judged by the bird stumps in the woods. What Arnie said in a story written in the 50s is that a lot of the wood was just cut down and burned. There wasn't really any market for it. Ferguson was unusual that he had someone to sell it to, but a lot of the big trees, which we will give our IT to have back, were just in the way, and they were making farming difficult. What this has to do with the burns is you can see all the stumps, and in those days, no heavy equipment, the horses could only do so much, so they dynamited a lot of the stumps. And John's middle son was killed in dynamiting a stump animal accident at 24. Ellett tells us that Burns' first family home was a story-and-a-half log cabin with a barn and outhouses. So, let's get back to the house. This is Goody Gudbranson. He was the master builder. He was quite a guy. He had been sent on foot by his parents to Reykjavik to apprentice with a shipbuilder at the age of 14. And when he completed his apprenticeship 5 years ago, he sailed for North America shortly after, expecting to be taken to the nearest seaport where he could continue his trade. For some reason, they didn't let him off until he got to North Dakota. So he ended up spending quite a bit of time teaching cowboys carpentry. But he eventually made his way to the coast. And he was quite peripatetic. He lived all over the Northwest, and he was responsible for quite a few houses on the point. And it's really hard to track down. There's a really good book written by his family that we have that tells a bit more of the story. I'm not doing it justice. But he was very much a skilled and trained carpenter. One of the two houses he was brought to Point Roberts to build in 1913 was the Yucky Thompson House, Sunset Farm. And this is that house. And this is...
that Bruce?
Thompson.
Yucky Thompson.
Oh, yeah, okay, I know, yeah.
So at the top of the bluff on the Boundary Bay side. And there's a couple things about this that... Well, one thing you should know about this house is that my dad spent a lot of time at the Thompson farm playing with the Baker and Thompson kids, and when Yucky died, he spent a lot of time helping Mrs. Thompson on the farm. So he always spoke fondly about this house. He loved the time he spent with her, really admired her. And so he really liked this Goody Gudbranson house. So when one came up for sale, he was ready to buy. So you can see the resemblance. That's the Thompson house. And in a second, that's Lakewood Heights. So very close. Now we'll have a little technical diversion. One of the things about the houses that were built at this time is that they're built using balloon construction. So you can shut off if you're not interested. I'll make this short, but it's kind of interesting. Back in Europe, all the houses were built with post and beam, and large rectangular beams, mortises and tenons. It was a very complicated way to build a house. It required a lot of skill and training. And it was a lot of labor. If you saw the movie Witness, where the Amish were raising the barns, you need a lot of people, and you need a lot of people who really knew what they were doing. That's not me screaming. No. The freezer?
It's the freezer. It's one of the appliances.
Anyway, as as the West was opened up, they couldn't continue with this style of building. They did it for certain barns and things. But then they switched to what is called balloon construction. And apparently that's a derogatory term because the people who built the old style thought they would just blow up like a balloon. But anyway, and this involved putting out 2-story tall studs all at once. Nowadays when you build a house, you build a platform, you build a wall, you tip it in place, then you build another platform and it's stacked like a cake. In those days they would just put up these 20-foot sticks, one at a time, tie them all together, and as you can see from the diagram, they hang the floor beams off the side of the sticks. This is a very different way to build a house. Some people think it's not as sturdy or reliable. Part of the reason it fell out of favor is because you couldn't get those long, straight sticks anymore. The good trees were all gone. But as a way of getting up houses, I've read that 2 men and a sawhorse using hand tools could build a house pretty quickly with this method of construction. And when you had the whole of western United States to build these houses in a hurry, that was the favorite time until about the favorite way to do it until about 1930. Let's see. I think that's it for construction sidebar. So we'll now talk about Leghorn Heights as a farm. So there you can see the whole thing. These pictures Dad took in the early 50s, 53 probably, when he bought the place. And you can see the house on the left, the garage to the front of the house, the chicken barns, and the large barn. So at this point, they hadn't been doing much with chickens here for about 10 years, and as you know, the blackberries here eat everything as fast as they can, so already things were being taken over. In my childhood, I only remember half of the biggest barn and then something that's out of frame here, but most of it was gone by the 60s and 70s, and now there's only a few things that remain. But it was a big operation. And the thing that I didn't know, that you may not know, is that Whatcom County was a major center of chicken and egg production in the early part of the 20th century. It was a huge industry, millions of birds and millions of farms. It was a huge part of the economy. When the settlers first got here before the war, no one wanted their eggs. They could bring in cheap eggs from elsewhere. They were actually, stop me if this sounds familiar, bringing in cheap eggs from China. So local farmers didn't have a hope. But they got together and they got smart about it. And they decided to form a cooperative in Washington State. And that started in 1917. And then by 1920, there was a station in Bellingham. This is the Washington Cooperative Egg and Poultry Association. Now this was the center of the universe that made chicken farming possible, because this is where you got your grain when you needed to feed your chicks, and this is where the eggs and birds went back to get their way to market. So by the time things were roaring in the 20s and 30s here, the co-op was shipping eggs and chickens to Alaska, and by the late 30s, they were going as far as Hawaii, the Philippines, England, Central and South America. Yeah, so Whatcom County chickens all over the world. And this is the building today, the granary they call it in Bellingham. It's still standing, they're fighting over it, but it's kind of cool to realize that this was the mothership. There was also a hatchery in Blaine a little later, but anyway, I had no idea what any of this. So, and there's their trucks. So for several decades, they had a lot of success, and that's what kept the farm going for a while. Now, one of the things that made them so successful is what we like to call electricity. And it's really hard to overstate how important this was at the time, because we take it for granted, but 100 years ago, it was bigger than the internet. And there is all kinds of literature for farmers saying it's time to practice scientific electrical farming. That's the way of the future. And when you think about it, you see that thing called the Delco light in the garage there, to the right. Delco, which is a division of General Motors, the legend is that somebody wrote to Mr. Kettering, who was one of the heads of the units of General Motors, and said, I've just used my Cadillac engine to light up my farm, and that works great. And he thought, you know, he's probably not the only farmer who would like to do this. So he invented the Delco electric generator in about 1917. And that was, before the grid, rural electrification didn't happen until the 30s. So all of a sudden you had a market, these farmers, and most of the population lived on farms, they could afford to buy this quite expensive piece of equipment, light up the chicken house, light up the house. So that's the modern farm at night. And Leghorn Heights, that's one of the electricity got to the house. I think all the lake is added probably about a few years after the house was built in 1913, because there wouldn't have been any power then. But that's
The electricity didn't come from Roberts till the 30s.
yeah,
Early 30s.
and that was normal for, that's what the New Deal and the rural electrification meant. So they were running these generators out back. That's another original push button light switch. Well, there's the Kohler generator. Just gas powered or kerosene powered. And that's the next one here. So that little building to the right is the pump house. So the generator sat on what is the right-hand side, and there's still a cement block there with 4 bolts, so you could bolt the thing down. Oh, the other company that made these was Kohler. People who make toilets and bathtubs and stuff, they saw a good opportunity. And the miracle of the Kohler generator plant was that it was automatic. So when you flicked a light switch, it would automatically turn on, the engine would fire up, the generator would start going, and you only had to wait about a minute to get light. Imagine the convenience. We should all be so patient. And then on the left-hand side of the pump house is the actual well and the pump. So they probably had an electric pump to get the water out to the chickens. One thing, I don't know if I have a picture of it. No, it didn't make the cut. One thing is that on the end of the pump house is a mysterious little hole that as a child fascinated me. I thought, why would anybody drill a hole in a perfectly good wall? And I realized that's for the exhaust, because they ran the pipe out with a muffler. But that's how you had electricity until the Soviets said the 30s in Port Roberts. And that changed everything. You can light your home, you can have a lot more chickens. A normal chicken farm would have 300 or 400 birds. Leghorn Heights had 3,000. So the labor saving was just astronomical. So you can see why they invested in it. The next picture, as gloomy and depressing as that looks, is state-of-the-art modern chicken farming in 1920. So this is an electric brood house. There's a warming area for the chicks. There's electric light when you need it. They seem to be scrimping on it for the photo. But that's modern chicken farming, circa 1920, 100 years ago. And the other reason that Whatcom County was so well thought of in chicken circles is that they specialized in a particular breed of chicken, the white leghorn. It was famous for the whiteness and size of its eggs. So the leghorn eggs were in great demand. And leghorns were so popular that at one point, one of them became a movie star.
I remember him.
So, the last word on chickens is I know there were other chicken farms at Port Roberts. The Waters had a big farm that produced a lot of chicken farms, but the Burns farm is the only one actually named after a chicken. So I hope that solves that mystery, because some people wonder why it's called that. And now the other part of the story is back to the Burns family. So Bryn and Waldo, 2 of the young kids that we saw, were now in their 20s. And sometimes their dad was around running the farm. Meanwhile, Egbert and his sister Emma had started to run a grocery store at Boundary Bay to help Egbert raise money because he wanted to go to law school. So that's Egbert, an up-and-comer, if ever there was one. And this is the original Naples grocery store. Now I should say that my dad did a lot of this research before he died, so I'm just cribbing his notes. So at this point I'm just coasting on his considerable efforts, because he took a lot of time looking into what the Burns were up to.
Is this where Clark's used to be? Or?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, this is not that building.
Okay.
No.
The Burns started with a fruit, vegetable, egg, and bread stand, and then they built this in the 20s, and then in 1931 it burned down, and the Meikles was born. So that was built in 1932, so pretty quick. And that's the corner of Clark's. You can recognize Clark's. So groceries, notions, ladies' clothing, soda fountain. So this carried on through the war, was very successful, and as those of you who've seen all the pictures, Boundary Bay was a hive of activity all through that period for summer campers and Canadians coming down for their soft ice cream from the Waylands. 1943 was a very bad year for the Burns family, however. Bryn, who ran Meikle Heights, died of cancer, and then Emma, his sister, died in October in a car and train accident. So she had run the clothing part of the store, and after she died, Egbert decided to phase that out, and he brought in pinball machines. specifically gambling pinball machines. Apparently there is something that makes more money than women's clothing, and I guess gambling is different. As Dad said, these were a great attraction for day trippers from the Lower Mainland because they were gambling machines and it only cost a nickel to play them. So at this time, there were two employees of the Meikle store that I'd like to talk about. Oh, that's another view of Meikle's. That's a little bit later, and that shows Wayland's. And the white spot to the left of Wayland's. So yeah, it was a hive of activity. Some of you were there. And one of the people working at the Meikles was the fountain girl, Bunny Meikle. And the gentleman at the time in charge of the feeding and carrying of the all-important pinball machines was Don Meikle. So, the Meikles is where my parents really got to know each other. Please shout out at any time.
We had a common interest in resenting our boss, Bruce.
So, I'll go back to the farm. So, at this time, in about 1950, the pinball machines, which had been so lucrative for so long for Edgar, were made illegal. So, and the farm, because with Brink gone, well, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Edgar took the machines out and he put them up in his brother's now abandoned chicken farm, Lakeland Heights, just stuck them in a shed. And he sold the store to the Hagen grocery family of Bellingham. They owned it for a while. And then it was sold to Tom Clark in the mid-50s, who owned it until he died.
The Hagen family.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bernice Burns, Burns' widow, asked Tom and Don Meikle, my dad and his brother, to come up to the farm, pack up the remaining chickens, and send them off to Bellingham. So they had memories of helping clear up the last of the farm. And then finally, in 1953, Edgar Burns put the farm on the market. The family homestead that he started with, he got up to 160 acres at one time, but through different reversals of fortune, he sold off bits of land, and it was down to 40 acres and a long-defunct chicken farm. And that's when his employees bought the farm. Excuse me. Couldn't resist. So this is what they got. So these were the buildings that were standing at the time. We still have that little pesticide applicator pump thing in the front, full of vintage poison. There's the barn. There's the house from a different angle. And over the years, there's another view. Oh, I should mention this building on the left. It's kind of hard to see in some of the other photographs, and we don't know if it was a shed or if it was a remnant of the original log house, but it was definitely predated the Leghorn Heights house, and it was kind of behind the back door and a little bit off to the side. But yeah, you can see it there to the right. There is a story, like I haven't got the names entirely straight, but they were welcoming some members of the family back to the point for a visit, and the lady of the house at the time said, on one condition, only if there's no alcohol, and, which apparently was a big joke because it's Point Roberts and alcohol's part of the scene. So all the men took all their booze and hid it in the washing machine, which was in that shed, and the party carried on outside. So the crop at Point Roberts changed from chickens to children. These are all the Meikle family cousins from the 60s. And one other follow-up. Oh, my dad ran a home for wayward tractors. That was one of them. That's another one which is still going. Actually, this one has now been handed to Jay Drew and appears in the 4th of July parade. And he's restored it mechanically, but not cosmetically, so but it runs beautifully now. So he's a happy tractor guy. This is the old Empire tractor that every child who visited the house got to drive. And Dad would sit them in the driver's seat and he'd walk along beside. So there are dozens of children out there who've driven that tractor illegally, but happily. And there's my sister Heather with Dad in the tractor. The tractor had a muffler, and I used to sit beside Dad on the floor in a wicker seat, and I was just fumigated the whole time. Any brain damage. So there's my dad as the grumpy proprietor. that's the living room. That's the kitchen that my parents put in the 50s. Oh, this is the giraffe. And this is a landmark. If you haven't been to the house, you won't recognize this, but everyone else is on there because anyone who comes to visit has to stand with their back against the giraffe and get marked. So there are literally hundreds of people inscribed on it. That's what we have to remove if there's ever a fire. The giraffe is a monument to tracking the growth of everyone. And that's one of the original light fixtures. That's a gift from the Magnusons from the 70s, a little Icelandic touch on the mantelpiece, a little matchbox, pride of place. That's the stairwell that Goody Goodbranson built. It's nice and open. There are still some chickens lurking. There's some political chickens. I missed the picture. Oh, anyway, in one of the sheds in the 70s, or about 1970, when we were kids, we found the pinball machines. And there were about 15 or 20 of them that have been sitting there for 20 years, rotting quite badly, most of them. Anyway, there's a couple of survivors. This is the only one still in the garage. But we pulled those machines apart because we knew they were full of nickels, and nickels were money, and it was old nickels. So my brother Drew did his diligence with all the old nickels we pulled out of there, the wartime nickels, and he learned that many of them were worth as much as 5 cents. There's no gold. Just one of the king apple trees. I should say that the difference between then and now that you'll notice is that Mom and Dad never stopped planting trees. The original trees were just a few 5 king apple trees in the old orchard with a banana apples across pollinator. And since then it's grown in quite a bit. But the king apple trees, which are about 100 years old, are still producing. That's Mom and Dad in the kitchen. Yeah, there you can see it's kind of crowded in with greenery. So it's not the barren place we saw at the very beginning by a long shot. Another table. Oh, there's the shed where the pinball machines were, which still survives. We turned it 90 degrees, and that's the wood shed at the back of Mom's garden. So that has been recycled. There's the piano. Yeah, there's the original house. And that's sort of the aerial view from the 90s. So there's the porch on the side, there's a couple of extra outbuildings, the greenhouse. Anyway, it's there's a lot more built up since the first picture. And this is what happens to old farm buildings in Point Roberts. The black barracks get them, no matter what. Oh, this is one of my dad's tractors. I'm sorry, these are kind of over. I apologize. Oh, and this is the final shot. So the picture of John that you see here was taken in that corner of the living room. So a few years ago we framed it and gave him pride of place overlooking where he had his portrait taken so many years ago at Meikle Heights. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Questions? When I was a little girl, there was a family named Duffy that lived there. And after that, there was a fellow named Burmeister. That was
So
before.
after the burns.
Yeah, Burmeister.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so.
It was hard to do like sort of street level research because there were no street numbers until the 70s when BC Telemate didn't go in. So on the U.S. Census, it's just they're in Point Roberts somewhere. There's no location on the old census records, and I don't. Those wouldn't even be posted. They're too recent. But,
I don't know. I like your dog. Duffy's had a beautiful dog called Laddie.
Does the church have any other records?
Sorry,
Does the church have any records?
I don't know. I don't look.
My dad always said that Eggert was perfectly normal until he fell down the hill. He must have had a head injury or something, because a head injury can change your personality permanently.
Well, the legend is they were digging the well or cleaning out the well,
Oh,
and he was quite young, and
Yeah.
a bucket fell on his head, and everyone always said he was a really nice guy, and then he was never the same since.
yeah,
So.
yeah. Kind of too bad.
basically the finish line there.
That would be probably one of the first, wouldn't it?
Well,
Bathtub?
Bathroom.
so that part there that you see was not part of the original house. That was added in the 30s. So that included a bathroom, and it made the kitchen a bit bigger, and it included a small bedroom for Marion, Bryn's daughter. So that is where and then at some point, we're not sure, one of the upstairs bedrooms was converted to a bathroom. So it's big. But yeah, like I said, that's disappeared in the 30s.
Is it true the house was financed by the insurance collected by the son that blew up in the explosion?
I couldn't find it, I mean, I don't know where you can find that. That was 6 years after the house was built, but it probably helped pay it off.
Oh, that doesn't sound right then.
No, but it could have, I mean, I think with the ups and downs, any bit of money helped.
Yeah.
Which son are we talking about?
The middle son, John Jr. And he was about 24 when that blasting accident happened.
1919.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember you mentioned that story.
Yeah, well, might not be true.
Yeah.
So when did the original apple orchard go in?
I think it must be nearly 100 years old, Chris, because your father told the story of a man driving an open touring car with seedling apple trees in the back, or seedling orchards actually, and he was selling them from house to house to house. So it could be 1915, before, maybe immediately after the big house was built
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah, because there was originally a pear tree there, or a plum tree, an Italian plum.
In your
The
yard?
pear tree. And the apple tree.
Yes.
And so our apple tree came on that truck too? Did they all?
So I think so.
Our apple tree would have come on that truck too?
Well, that was my impression.
Yeah.
That a great many orchards were all planted about the same time because of this delivery. There was a nursery in LaConner, you must know. So,
Telling us?
in LaConner, and they were developing apples, and they may have sent a truck out. Strikes me that they could have.
Tillinghast was the big one in LaConner.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was about the Goodwin son. So he had children who'd been stayed on the point?
Mr. Goodgrandson,
Yeah,
the one who built the house.
the builder.
Yeah, we've got it in the book. I can.
He was
Look,
only
he's
on
in
the
the
point for a few years.
Yeah.
Because, I was in Hawaii talking to a lady that was next to me, and she turned out to be from Chawasan. This other lady started listening to us. We were talking about Islamic people selling Point Roberts, and this lady comes along, she goes, I couldn't help but overhear you. Do you know my I think it was a great-grandfather, was Mr. Goodgrandson. And so she knew all about him building all these homes. And did he not build the church too?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So it was just weird. Yeah.
Point Roberts is everywhere.
Didn't John Burns travel a lot or go away and work or
Yeah.
something?
And I think
Was he out in the Gold Black Branch or something? Or
not that I could see, but in looking, because one of Marion's daughter, Bernice, has done a lot of work online on the Ancestry.com on the genealogy site. And I sent her an email, never heard back from her, but I can still look at the genealogy. And she's tracked his every appearance in all the government records, and he's all over the planet. And so, but I don't think he was alone in that. I think Goodprinson was the same thing. He had to go where the work was, and
Yeah.
there were only so many houses that were going to be built in Point Roberts, so
Yeah.
why stick around? Sigismund used to commute back and forth, and he used to go back to Victoria. He was another skilled carpenter, and he lived in Victoria for a while, and he would go back every summer to do work there because it was still busier than here. So I think in those days you just got on a steamship and went wherever you had to. So yeah, he did move around a lot.
Yeah.
you didn't mention that the eggs and chicken hooks and everything were all checking
Or
my
the
truck.
truck faces exactly.
Because that depot was right on the water, it would be easy, it's just literally feet from the edge of the Bellingham Harbor, so it would be easy to get it in and out. So they must have done that all over, the San Juans and stuff.
They probably did. And we had to ship the feed up from there, and the eggs and cream back to the by boat.
That's good.
Yeah, which is also the mail.
So I'm really cutting the process up front when you pay them much for it.
And you bought it in 53, Bunny?
53, yes.
Whenever it came up for sale, was there a lot of interest in it, or what, or what was it like
It
then?
was overwhelming, Karen. Point Roberts was quite dull at that point. But we had the interest.
You had the interest, but you weren't vying for it with other people.
Not at all.
No.
Well, there was beer on Sunday, which we didn't have in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Well,
That was
there's
a big attraction.
There's one document that we found last year, and we haven't really found it again, but we'll find it again. Anyway, it's the flyer that Edgar wrote, promoting it, and I'm sorry that we couldn't relocate it, but in all the paperwork. But it's a remarkable piece of marketing, because Edgar, it's a 8.5 by 14 piece of green paper is saying, this is a terrific opportunity, and it's 40 acres, and you could log it and pay for it. It could be a Bible camp. It could be, he was just full of dreams because he wanted to unload it. But yeah, we'll turn it up and make it part of the record. But it was really funny to see that because he was selling hard. So I don't think. And apparently, when Mom and Dad, had to renegotiate the mortgage with the First National Bank of Ferndale. Since they paid their mortgage on time, that was no problem. Anyone who wanted to buy abandoned chicken farms, more than welcome.
Now, you mentioned that too. Were you able to buy it outright, or was it on a 99-year thing still?
We had a mortgage, is that what you
No. At Arlo Cottage, we had a 99-year lease on it from Whaley's.
Before you had a crate trailer for it.
We didn't get a clear title until, I don't know when, I thought it was in the 50s.
No, this was the crate trailer.
Okay. Okay. I don't know when that came up.
That may have been unique to Boundary Bay.
I think it was.
Because
Yeah.
Mike had all of that property
Yeah.
and he subdivided it. He may have put that provision in it.
Well, they bought it in 29, my parents, so I don't know, it's name.
But he subdivided in 1912, I think.
And Bunny, were you as excited about buying it as John was?
We were young, we were stupid. I had no idea what we were getting into, actually. So excitement, yes, I suppose we were. Yeah. But, yes.
You've done a lot
We
of work on it.
Pardon?
You've done a lot of work on
We
it.
haven't lived in it, we last for 103 years. Wow, it's crazy.
But we found the letter where the U.S. immigration, his dad was commuting to town at the time, and they made it clear in no uncertain term that yes, he would have to register for the draft in 53 if he wished to stay on Troy Roberts. So that was a good incentive. So I said, Mom, I never knew he was a draft dodge. But yeah.
There's that photo.
Oh, there's that photo again.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
yeah. Let's look at Barnes instead.
Out of curiosity, what was the population of Point Roberts in the early 50s? Do you have any sense of how many people were living here? That hasn't changed much.
No.
North of 1,500 permanent residents
Maybe
now.
400.
Yeah.
Permanent residents.
About 400.
That's, I'm guessing.
Were the canning factories still running at that point?
Irison's, wasn't it?
Iverson's was, and the one in that's now a yellow house.
The yellow building over
Yeah.
on the west side, that was still going? But the main one, Willie Point, was closed, right?
Long gone.
One of them closed in 1915 and the other in
a lot of fishing in the
Yes,
summer.
fishing, both
Fishing
fishing
and
and fishing and sailing. A lot of people, and
Yeah,
there's
sailing
sailing
and
go to
sailing.
Alaska during the summer for fishing as well.
And no marina.
Just cows.
That didn't come till, yeah.
70s?
Is the marina early 70s or is this?
No, later than that.
1980, I think.
Yeah.
But the mid or late 70s. Was it?
I don't remember.
Well, this has been wonderful, and we have a record attendance of 6 people. This is yay! So thank you all for coming. Next week, next Saturday is the Arts and Crafts Festival, and we'll all be down there. I think the Historical Society might have a table there. The Friends of the Library will. The library will be open, but we won't be having this chat next Saturday. The Saturday after that, August 8th, Sylvia Schoenberg and Joan Lindy are going to talk about their old houses, the Thorstenson places. And the weekend after that is open, we'll see. And the weekend after that, Michelle Whalen Pomada of the Whalen descendants, she'll be speaking with some people about some of the Whalen property. Okay, thank you so much for coming. We are just